Welcome back. Tonight's final presidential debate will focus exclusively on foreign policy. Robert Nolan joins us now to break down some of the issues that are expected to come up tonight. Robert is the editor-in-chief of new media at the Foreign Policy Association. He's also the producer of Great Decisions in Foreign Policy on PBS. Welcome. Thanks very much, Robert.
Hey, happy to be here.
Let's start with Benghazi. It was one of the more contentious spots of the town hall debate last week. Since then, we've had reporting from several sources about changes in CIA and intelligence information about what happened before and during the Libya attack. Is this still a potential problem spot for President Obama? Do you think some of the starch has been taken out of Mitt Romney's criticism? And how do you anticipate it coming up tonight?
Well, I think one thing we can be sure of is that Mitt Romney is going to get his facts straight tonight as far as what the Obama administration's response was to the Benghazi attacks on the U.S. consulate there. From a foreign policy perspective, though, I hope it doesn't get too caught up in the minutia of the semantics of this particular episode. It's, of course, is very important anytime American diplomats are killed overseas. It's a huge blow to our credibility in the region, and it's an important issue to discuss. But let's not forget, we've got 60,000 troops in Afghanistan. We've got major problems in Syria. Iran is posing a nuclear threat. There are a lot of bigger issues, and I hope tonight doesn't get too caught up on the semantics of this particular Benghazi attack.
Well, let's shift over to one of the issues we know is going to appear in the debate tonight, and that being Afghanistan and Pakistan, I think, are being bundled into one topic area. Where are we on the debate here in this country about Afghanistan and the continuing war? Is it a matter of if we should get out, when we should get out, and how we should get out, or are there other factors at play?
I think the debate on Afghanistan ended a number of years ago. I think most Americans support the president's policy of withdrawing from from Afghanistan as quickly as possible. And I think most people have checked out on Afghanistan. We've done some polling and seen that Americans are concerned about Pakistan, obviously a nuclear-armed country. We've heard a lot about resentment towards American drone strikes. There's still a number of terrorists who are hiding out in the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
We know that Iran is going to come up tonight. Two questions here. What are the differences between President Obama and Mitt Romney's positions on Iran? And will the reporting over the weekend in the Times about the possibility of negotiations with the Iranian government factor into the debate? And who does it help, who does it hurt?
Sure. I think it's a big issue. It's a very important issue. Iran obviously poses a security threat. In the long term, really, for the United States. For the Great Decisions series on PBS that I produce, we've been interviewing dozens of people on this particular issue over the past 3 months, and I don't think a single security expert, either on the right or the left, has told me that Iran poses a direct, immediate security threat to the United States. So you're going to hear a lot of bluster about that tonight, but in reality, that's just not the case. Iran simply hasn't enriched enough uranium to build a weapon, and secondly, it doesn't have ballistic weapons that could even reach Europe, much less the United States. So the direct threat from Iran is obviously to our ally Israel, and we're certainly going to hear a lot about Israel tonight. But just to wrap up on Iran, a lot of rhetorical differences between the two. The administration's policy seems to be working. I mean, as you noted in the New York Times this weekend, we saw that there may be one-on-one direct talks in the near future. That hasn't been confirmed. It's not clear exactly how that's going to pan out. But if that's even being discussed in the media, you can bet that that's a direct result of the tight sanctions that the U.S. and particularly the European Union. The EU hasn't got much credit for this, but they've really ratcheted up the heat as well on the Iranians. And Iranians are feeling the pinch, not just the leadership, but the people as well. So who knows how that's going to play out in the coming year. We could see a repeat of the 2009 uprisings in Iran, and I'm sure that's something that both Mitt Romney and Obama would like to see in the near future. So.
Robert, you mentioned Israel and our relationship with Israel briefly. What's your take on the nature of the U.S. relationship with Israel, and has it deteriorated or been strengthened in the last 4 years?
You know, it's interesting. What President Obama's done is essentially, certainly he's driven a wedge between the American leadership and the Israeli leadership to some extent. And I think what Obama's tried to say is that Israeli interests are not always U.S. interests. Whereas from the GOP, the more traditional stance is that there should be, as Mitt Romney uses the phrase, no daylight between the two. So that's the major rhetorical difference. Again, substantially, you know, under the Obama administration, aid to Israel, more than $3 billion a year continued. We continue to cooperate very closely with Israel in terms of containing Iran. And there's been a lot happening sort of under the radar that we haven't heard too much about. Of course, there was the 2010 Stuxnet cyber attack on Iran's nuclear facility. The U.S. and Israel cooperated very closely on that. We continue to collaborate in terms of intelligence throughout the Arab world as these uprisings take place. So I think on an operational level, the U.S.-Israel relationship is just as strong as it's always been and will continue to be so regardless of a Romney or an Obama administration.
And finally, Robert, the state in the entire Arab world, the so-called Arab Spring, I mean, like most people, I was inspired watching people taking to the streets and pressing for democracy, and then join people, I think, in sharing a similar fear that, well, perhaps we were getting into a situation with new governments that maybe didn't like us or didn't want to, respect our role. Is that where we are on the debate internally when it comes to American-Arab relations, or is it, are there bigger issues at play here?
I think the key question here is really what the U.S. role on the world stage is and how we can manage these things. I mean, these are really historic, revolutionary moments in time. So I think whoever's in the White House is going to have some pretty complicated issues to deal with regarding the Arab Spring. The only thing we can do is stay true to our values. I think what you're going to see tonight in the debate is a lot of discussion about the U.S. role in the world. I was very happy to see that come up as one of the topics, because all of these issues that we're talking about are really framed by that. And there's a distinct difference between the two worldviews of these two candidates. President Obama from day one has advocated engagement. One of his first trips was to the Arab world to give a historic speech in Cairo not long after he was elected. And he even offered an olive branch out to Iran, which was rebuffed, and that I think will come up tonight as well if the Romney campaign is smart and really wants to go after him on that. The Romney campaign, on the other hand, wants to I think advance on more of a stronger, U.S. presence around the world. We could call it American exceptionalism, and it's really leading by values, by example. I wouldn't quite say that Romney is an advocate of the freedom agenda that George W. Bush advanced in the region, but maybe a freedom agenda 2.0 with some tweaks and some revisions to that. So it's certainly a more America first approach to U.S. foreign policy, whereas Obama has really sought to, I think, alleviate some of the grievances that existed around the world following some of the Bush administration's policies, which included, 2 wars in the Arab world and a number of other policies that just generally weren't very well received in many parts of the world.
Well, here's hoping we get the same level of clarity in tonight's debate as we did in this interview. Robert Nolan, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, we're going to talk about what strategy Mitt Romney is going to try to use to win an issue that is in Obama's pocket right now. We'll tell you what that is next.